Hi everyone, it's Suzanne Culberg, and I'm really excited today to be welcoming Bev from Living Fabulously with Bev. And I reached out to Bev because we both work in a similar field with health, and I've been having some of my own cravings lately. So I thought I would invite Bev today and we would have a discussion about it. So welcome, Bev.
Thanks, Suzanne. It was so great that you reached out because, like we're working in this space, but that doesn't mean we don't have cravings ourselves. What we do have is we have tools, we've got strategies, and we wanted to share those with you because they really sneak up on you, cravings. It's sometimes it's just purely a kind of emotional hunger. Sometimes it's kind of really the body's saying something, but we want to cut through all the noise for you today. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm a wellbeing transformation specialist, and I'm working with female entrepreneurs and professionals who really, I guess, they're feeling exhausted by their lives and they've got brain fog, and it's impacting their ability to actually work and earn consistently. And what I do is support them to create the energy that they need to really run their business with passion and to create the space where they've got time for themselves in their life. So how about you, Suzanne? Let's hear more about you.
So I work with women, mostly mums, that doesn't have to be, who eat for reasons other than hunger, who are done with the fad diets, who are done with being mean to themselves, who are done with punishing themselves, and know that this is really going to be a long-term thing, and they're after support and they're after someone to reflect back to them how, it's not that we don't ever do a Macca's run. It's not that we don't ever overeat, but it's how that we come back from that in a way that's kind and gentle, and how we can still allow these treats or these things in our lives. It's not that we have to eat clean all the time, but we can just stop at this one thing and enjoy it rather than having it lead to this big binge fest and I'm going to quit and start again when I feel motivated.
Until Monday comes, hey? Until Monday
Yes.
comes. We don't need any more Mondays. We just need one meal at a time or one snack at a time.
Exactly. Yes.
So while you're listening, I just encourage you to just type the questions in the comments so that we can come and answer those for you. Because obviously we've got a couple of things we really want to share. We just want to cut through the noise. There's just often so much to be said about cravings, but honestly, you're in safe hands here with us.
Totally. And the more interactive it is, and the question that you have that you might be like, oh, I'm not really sure, someone else is bound to have that question, and it really allows this to be a safe space that we can share what's happening and not feel judged and not feel like we have to be quiet about it. Because I think a lot of us, I know for me, even still now, sometimes feel embarrassed about this. It's like, I teach this, I shouldn't have this, but I still have cravings, and it's totally normal. And sometimes they're a physical thing, which is what Bev specializes in, and I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on this. Like, there's things missing from the way we're eating and things that we need, and sometimes it's an emotional thing, and that's my area. So this is going to be great.
Awesome. So should we kick off with our first starting out of the block?
Yes.
The question that always comes to mind for me is, why do we crave junk food? Never broccoli or anything like that, usually. And we know that it's junk food and it's not good for us. So kick us off with that, Suzanne.
Well, I think sometimes it's a marketing thing. So if you look at a Mars a day helps you work, rest or play, or Snickers really satisfies, or like it's marketed to us in this way that these things will make us feel better, that nobody markets to us, go eat lettuce. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we have this part of ourselves, like this inner bit, like this rebel going, nobody telling me what to do. But the thing is, nobody's telling you to eat lettuce. So I think sometimes like it's these subliminal messages that come to us when we watch television, when we walk down the street, when we go to the shops, when we see the big colourful signs that the food will make us feel better, it will take the stress away. And like when you see the ads for all the companies, it's always, that you have this and you feel better. So I think, a part of that is the way that it's been sold to us.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing that's really important here is that for people who've been chronic dieters, they have begun to demonize certain foods. So there's this low carb or low fat or low whatever it is. And so certain foods in the spectrum of normal eating that nature provided for us to eat, so it's not something that comes in a bag, box, can, or jar. I'm talking about stuff that you get in the fresh produce section. So I can't tell you how many people will tell me that they don't eat sweet potato. And yet, for example, sweet potato is one of those things that has tryptophan in, which is so good for your brain and your mood and everything. So it makes you function at high energy. So we've got this sort of whole mixed message. I agree. That's the marketing of the things that are not food. They're food-like substances oftentimes, or they're not even food, when you talk about Mars bar.
Yes.
Yep. And then you've got that. And then you've got, on the other hand, you've got what we've already got to eat. And yet we will not have a sweet potato because we think it's too high in carb. We're happy to eat a Mars bar.
Oh, and then also too, there's so many ways we could go with this, Bev, but what came to mind when you were saying that is, like, I have 2 young children. If I ask them, like, some healthy foods, they would list off, broccoli, carrot, apple, pear, like, foods. But then when you ask or if we ask, say, our great-grandparents, they would talk about foods, as you said. But for us in this day and age, there's, low fat, low carb, keto, paleo, like, we've made food into these things. No wonder it's confusing. It's like, it's so stressful. We don't actually talk about food. We talk about ways of eating, and then is this way better than that way? We've kind of complicated something that young children and our great-grandparents they don't get, because, we've made it out to be something really big.
And I think because if you think of when you do feel the craving, it's often when you're short of time, or you are either under some level of stress, or there's some life event that's happened. But the thing is, you talked about advertising, and advertising is being conditioning us to say it's got to be quick and easy. But yet they talk about the TV dinner. Ta-da! Here's the TV dinner. Well, the fact that it can stay in the fridge, have you ever looked at the dates, the sell-by dates on those things? The fact that it can stay in a fridge, not in a freezer, in a fridge for months. I mean, that should give you a clue that there's nothing nutritional about that food. But I think the why we crave that too is a lot of the things that you talk about too is, one is boredom and one is emotional eating. So let's talk about emotional eating.
So a big thing that I work on with people, and it'll be interesting for my followers watching this, because I don't usually talk about the food as in actual what we eat, because so often different bodies respond to different things, and this is a whole other area. My main specialty is the emotions, and that's because the number one thing I say to people, and it's something I continually work on myself, is, am I actually hungry, as in physical hunger, or am I feeding head hunger or emotional hunger? And it happens to me, like, if I'm really tired, if I've taken on too much, if I've yelled at my kids and I feel really angry, I would rather, it's difficult to talk about, but I would rather feel guilty than angry or upset at somebody else. I would rather feel these internal feelings. And when I overeat, in general, I feel really guilty, and then I start beating myself up. So it's easier for me to deal with that than to deal with the fact that, maybe somebody's wronged me or something, And I think sometimes it's like, if you're not physically hungry, no amount of food is going to fix it, because food will help you feel full. If you're actually angry or stressed or tired or something, what you really need is to sleep or to rest or to do less. But we're in this time where we've got deadlines and we've got responsibilities. So what we tend to do is eat, And then not only do we have the underlying emotion that was there to begin with, but we have guilt and shame and these other things on top of that, because we didn't actually solve it by eating. We may have felt better in that instant gratification, like while we were eating the Mars bar or the Tim Tams are my go-to. But as soon as that's done, we have all this other stuff as well. And then that can lead us to thinking that there's just no point and it's too hard and we'll start again Monday, you know, the universal day to change our life.
Yes. Yes. And you know what I also think, how a craving can sometimes happen for me is when I try to substitute. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to use an example that I hear a lot from my clients. After dinner, I would just love one glass of wine. And so instead of just having even a quarter glass of wine, savoring it and enjoying it, they graze the whole evening, the rest of the evening, on all sorts of things. And people will tell me they even eat things they don't like to eat because they've been trying to substitute, because in their head they're thinking that wine is not good for me. And yes, if you overdrank the wine, yes. Or like you said, is if you make a decision, you go through a process and you've made a decision that right in this moment you're going to enjoy that piece of chocolate, then enjoy it, savor it, because if you keep substituting, what's going to happen is the list of things you've eaten between when the craving first hit and when it passes is going to be probably half the pantry.
Yes. And if you're using some form of program to track what you're doing, like you're counting calories or points or tracking the thing, like I'm not encouraging that behavior, but sometimes like a thing that I do personally is I photograph what I eat and I put it into a private Facebook group, which is, you know, just me. And then I look for patterns, because what can happen is that exact thing. It'll be like, what I really wanted was this. And I was like, I feel I shouldn't have it, so I'll have that instead. And all the substitutions, if I just had the thing in the first place in a small controlled amount and enjoyed it, it would have been over. But when I try and be good, that just sets me up for, you know, as you said, eating all this other stuff and then end up eating it anyway and just feeling really bad and actually quite sick because I've eaten so much, you know.
Exactly. And what I've always wondered is, why do we call junk food a treat? We always associate, I've never heard of anyone mentioning a good food as a treat. So, like, help me understand some of that.
I think a lot of that is back into the marketing as well, because we're trying to sell it, you know. It's a treat food, it's a reward. It's a lot of how some of us were brought up, and it's something as a mother to young children I have to be really wary of, because it's just conditioned in me. And like, so for example, my daughter is at school now. We're not very athletic family. Like we are healthy and we do things, but we're not ever going to be winners, you know. And she went in the school running carnival and she came last, and I was gutted, because it brought up for me what it was like at school, like, you know, to come really last and other children perhaps not being as nice, and, you know, a bit of laughter and stuff. So she was gutted, I was gutted, and my first thought was, let's go to the bakery, you know what I mean? Because let's go and buy a cake. That will make it feel better. That's a treat, you know. And I was like physically halfway walking there before I was like, hang on, I don't want to instill this type of behavior in her because it's my go-to. But also it's like, that's what we do when you're children, you fall over and you skin your knee or something. Like sometimes we give them a lollipop, or if you go and have a needle, like we give you a sweet. Like we push these things, or we reward these activities with lollies, and then it becomes a habit, like a real habit. Like, you know, when you go to bed, you brush your teeth. When you have something painful, you have something sweet. And I think that's a lot to do with the treat. Like, you deserve it. Something bad has happened, and we are ignoring or pushing down the emotion instead of saying, like, my daughter and I ended up having a conversation, and she's like, Mummy, I was really sad that I came last. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay that you came last, and it's okay to feel sad about it. We can feel sad sometimes. You know, it's an allowable thing. We don't have to push it with food. We don't have to treat it. We can just feel it and then move on. You know?
Yeah, that's so true. All that conditioning, if you think of it, I mean, mine for me, which I still continue to need to work on, and you'd think, well, hell's teeth, you've got a lot of vintage years behind you, but I'm still working on it, is I was never allowed to talk at the dinner table until I'd finished my food. So what do? I shovel my food in. Sometimes, you know, I wouldn't even have been aware of what I've eaten, even as an adult. So there are these things, and I think when you bring awareness to them and shine a light on it, then that sort of supports you too. And the other thing is, you're right, when we celebrate things, it's always with sweet treats. So when we have birthdays and parties and stuff like that, there's always the sweet treat. And then the other thing I can think of, and I think I was guilty of this myself, so hopefully any mums listening kind of can give themselves some grace, is eat your dinner, get your dessert.
Yes. I finish everything on your plate, and then it's actually something that in my household we have. We don't have treats. We have sometimes foods. It's all about how you label it, and also sometimes we would have what would be considered a dessert, but not every night. And it's like, now, originally I lived interstate. Now I'm back into the same state as my family. So when my family members visit, that's what they do, and they still do it. And I'm not saying that they can't, but it's just like you need to do that once the children are in bed, because I don't want my kids set up that we eat dinner, we eat past full, and then there's even the joke, I don't know about your family, but it'd be like, I have a second stomach just for desserts, or there's always room for ice cream and things like that. And it's like, how even joking about those things are we introducing them into our subconscious and then taking them on as a belief?
Yeah, and it's still this thing, you know. For example, I met one woman, and originally I thought that's a weird way to do things, but I think she had recognized what she wanted when she went out. She always used to eat dessert first and then leave space for what was, and I thought, how weird is that? But I guess for her, maybe she was past the conditioning and just saying, I don't eat dessert at home, but I am going to enjoy it when I'm out, and then I'll just eat till I'm full. You know, that
I love that. I can totally see myself doing that when I go out, because sometimes it's like, that's what you're looking forward to. And that's what we're saying. Like, Bev and I are not saying that you can't eat these things and you can't enjoy. Like, the biggest thing is that you want to enjoy food. And, you know, if you go out and you're like, I really want whatever it is for dessert, but then I'm going to have the breads and the soup or the dip and like all the courses, and you get to dessert and you're already so full, you don't even taste it really, and then you feel sick, and then you feel guilty, and then it just spirals from there. You know what I mean?
So what do we need instead? How do we do this so that we can not be sort of slave to cravings?
I think it's twofold. Well, it's manyfold, but part of it is, if you recognize a craving, I like to recommend to people to keep a cravings journal, like not a food diary, not something to beat yourself up with, but something just so you have evidence, you have data so you can observe. So sometimes, like for me personally, if I'm regularly hungry at about 3-4 in the afternoon, like I have the cravings, it's often that I haven't had a solid enough breakfast, like I haven't eaten enough earlier in the day. So if there's a pattern to the craving, I look for, you know, what have I had earlier that day, and, you know, how can I maybe adjust that? Or if it's an in the moment thing, like it's I'm trying to think of an example, you know, like there's different types of cravings. There's ones that are habitual, that may be adjusting to what you're eating and how much and when, and there may be ones that are conditional, like whenever I go and visit my mum, I always want to have dessert, because they still do, and that's just a habit thing. So that's something to check in with myself and go, am I actually hungry, or is this a pattern of behaviour? And then there's times like where you're stressed or when you're tired And it's like, what do I really need in this moment? Do I need a nap? Do I need a walk? And how can I give that to myself? Like, I might not be in a position to go and have a nap, but maybe I could take 5 minutes and just close my eyes and breathe, or listen to a nice piece of music, or just get outside with my cup of tea and have some fresh air, or something to start, instead of just kind of like going, I'll eat and put it and shove it down and continue to do, you know?
Mm.
What do you think, Bev?
I think that, you know, there's so much information out there, and like you mentioned, all these types of and ways of eating. And for me, the best way to overcome cravings is to actually have your own personalized health plan, because we are unique. So, for example, if somebody thrives on fermented foods or kombucha, that does not mean that you will. And so, therefore, if you have a eating protocol that's been guided and decided with you, you can then start to use your body as a barometer. And your body, as you check into your body about what it is that you're eating that feels good for you, as you start to nourish your body more, the cravings subside. Because then you've got the right level of nutrients. So we mentioned, you know, often people who are craving sugar are lacking in a lot of minerals, you know. So you're thinking things like chromium from broccoli, phosphorus from things like eggs, you know, sulfur from cabbage. And I mentioned tryptophan from turkey or things like that, spinach. So there, you need to often be guided in that way, but to create a plan that's for you, because like the different diets have been genericized.
Yes.
Even when you're talking about paleo, not everybody can actually eat red meat. So for me, you know, your body is often some of the cravings that come up because you're nutrient deficient is because you're eating a plan that's been designed for the mass. And remember that somebody's usually written a book, they're selling a method, they're making money from it. It's not, to me, it's not about supporting the greater mankind. That may have started that way, but it's usually a business.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think adding on to that, Bev, one other thing is the personalized plan for you, as in what works for you, and also realizing that can change. See, I have released 78 kilograms. My requirements is in volume of food and type of food when I was at my biggest, and now is radically different, and that didn't happen overnight. And when I did a prescribed program in the past, like I'd dropped previously 40 kilos and 60 kilos on diets, they were just like, we'll just have a bit less, or like they didn't take into the fact that, you know, as you release weight, a lot of us become more active and physically fit. The amounts of different foods changes, and it's just like eat less doesn't really work, because your actually energy requirement increases. So it's personalized to you, but also your body will change. And then like the body I have now post children, as opposed to like a lot of people are like, I want to get back to where I was in high school. Well, you were a different you back then. So it's personalizing it, and it's open to change as you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there's something about the impact of how much we eat and the timing of it. So let's chat about that on our weight and our health. You know, how does it impact?
Well, definitely. I think so many times if you follow everybody has different body types. Like if we were talking embryologically, I don't want to go into that because it's really confusing, but we develop from 3 layers, the endoderm, the ectoderm, and the mesoderm. Some people have a more of a mesoderm body type, so they'll be taller and slimmer naturally, like the supermodel types. And then say for me, I'm more of an endomorph, I'm heavier set. So when I tried to diet before and when I lost weight, I used to get really frustrated that I didn't look like them. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's really important that you can do the things to get the best body for you, but your makeup might be different to somebody else's. We have, bigger shoulders, bigger hips, bigger chest, or taller or shorter. Like, we can't change our genetics, but we can change like how we think and how we feel about ourselves and make the most of them and work to our strengths. Like for me personally, as I got closer to goal weight in the past, I'd be like, do more cardio, like get more calories burnt. But I do better with weight. So I'm a strong person and I'm a strong body type. So with this, it's like looking at, what works for you. So in terms of eating, if you follow a protocol or a diet that says meal, snack, meal, snack, meal, snack, and that works for some people, and then you try it and you're like, I don't get the results. And then the person, as well-meaning as they are who's running it, is like, well, you must be cheating, or you're not trying hard enough, and you get really down on yourself. Perhaps you're not a body type who responds well to frequent amounts of food. Perhaps you do better more on, meals with no snacks or even intermittent fasting, but you won't know this until you test it out and see how you feel, because no one can tell you how you feel. Are you feeling energetic? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling like heavy or lethargic or bouncy? It's really individual. And like, so for me personally, I don't talk a lot about how I eat because I don't want people to go, well, she's dropped 78 kilos, so I'm going to go and do that, because the way I eat might not work for you, So it's really about trialing it, and not just trying it for a day or a week and going, oh, that didn't work. Like really committing that this is going to be a long-term thing. This is your health for life, not for a season and not for an event or not for Christmas,
Yeah. And you mentioned there, I think for some people that sort of 5 sort of portions of food spread out over the day works well if they've got low blood sugar and that they need to, and that probably will remedy itself as the gut heals and other things change too. But I think the other thing is if you were to respond to your body and eat when you're hungry. So if you're naturally more hungry in the morning, eat more during the morning, sort of front load your food, because what you don't want to be doing is you certainly don't want to be eating a big meal at night, because that's going to affect the quality of your sleep. So you're going to be wanting to eat more of your food. And people often say, well, I've got a family to feed, so how do I do that? Well, everybody can have a bigger breakfast. That's not that. Or you could cook the meal for family and have less that night, but have a bigger portion of that for lunch the next day while your kids are at school. So you can work around that, and the timing of when you eat that food is probably relevant. And for me, like I mentioned, that I gobble up my food. You need to chew your food properly. Your stomach doesn't have teeth. Your mouth has teeth. So what you need to do is chew it and masticate it until it's slushy. And so for somebody who really eats quickly, and then that causes another problem, is that your satiety hormones don't kick in time and you overeat. So if you, let's say, for example, you tend to eat quickly, there's some strategies. You can put your knife and fork down between each mouthful. You can even count the number of chews, just to be bringing it really consciously to yourself. Because sometimes I notice I've probably chewed a piece of chop 6 times, and no, that won't be enough. So it's sort of bringing just being present with the food and really, allowing it to nourish. Because whilst your stomach has got hydrochloric acid, most of us, because we're stressed out, we don't have enough hydrochloric acid. So it doesn't break the food down. The food then starts going through the gut and it ferments in the gut. And that's where you get the bloating and the flatulence from. So it can start from even just when you eat too quickly, you actually take in too much air while you're eating. So there's pockets of air in the food. So it could even be from that. But I think just that whole mindfulness around eating for me is, I'd say, these are some of the things you can take away, and you can implement one of these things at a time, slow down your eating, serve less on your plate, those sort of things. And wait a few minutes to work out whether you really do need another plate of food, that kind of thing, because your satiety hormones take some time to kick in. So I always say, wait a short while and work out if you are really still hungry, or it's good. So you kind of think, oh yeah, I'll have another plate, because that hormone regulation every time you eat is also governed by how much sleep you have. So if you are not sleeping well enough, and also definitely at rest between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. at night, when all the hormone systems, the whole endocrine system's being reset. And if you do not get deep enough sleep, they do not balance the ghrelin and leptin. So what ends up happening is that you overeat, number one, and then you keep eating. So it's kind of, so from a cravings point of view, that's why sometimes you can't stop, because that hormone is not kicking in your brain either. So it's sort of really important. I don't want to run down the rabbit hole with that, but it's really important. Good sleep, it governs how you eat the next day.
Yeah, and I can really attest to that. And the other thing that you spoke about is eating later at night. See, I front load my food personally. I eat the majority of my food at breakfast and then lunch, and then I tend to eat dinner quite early and quite a small amount. But I have a husband and a family, so what we do is I still sit down with them and I have a much smaller portion. But people ask me, am I setting my children up with bad examples like mum's not eating? But it's not like I'm not eating or I'm not part of it. It's like mummy is not very hungry. So we talk a lot about checking in with whether you're hungry or not. And also too, I really loved how you said about putting the cutlery down. It feels like a drag, the first few times you do it, or chewing a lot feels like a drag. But after a while, it does become a habit. And the other thing that I do personally, and I recommend my clients, is I eat off a small plate. So my children and I have the exact same sized plate. And I used to be embarrassed when I went to someone's house and that to ask for a smaller plate, because you put the food on the plate to fill it and then you eat, because you have that whole eyes are bigger than your stomach, that saying. Well, obviously, literally they're not, but you will eat, to an amount. So I actually eat off a small plate, and then when I finished, I wait about 20 minutes, and I used to actually literally set an alarm, and now I don't need to. And then I'll have, we tend to play cards or board games after dinner and have this social time, and then check, actually I'm not hungry. Whereas growing up, we would eat a whole big thing, and then we'd eat dessert, and then we'd all kind of sit on the couch and watch TV and feel bloated and gross. So it's that thing of being mindful of checking in with yourself. And often when you do front load and eat a lot more earlier in the day, only if you're hungry, like don't make yourself eat, you find you're not as hungry in the evenings. And I find that when I do have a big meal, or especially something sweet, late at night, I don't sleep as well. I feel restless and I wake up a lot.
Exactly, because what's happening is digestion is still taking place. So it takes on average for most people about 3 hours for your meal to be digested. So that's why, if you're eating at 8 o'clock at night and then you're trying to go to bed at 10 o'clock, you've still got another hour of digestion to go. And then that means that probably the sleep hormones are kicking in because you're restless. The body's very clever. It deals with what it's being given, and it tries to adapt to the best way that it can. And I think another thing that's really important here is we're talking about doing one or two things consistently. We are not talking about perfection. We are trying to get just to understand that, like you said, I love that way that you say, have a cravings journal, because you need to see the pattern. It's so much in our subconscious, the cravings, most of the time, that we don't even realize it. I know that when I was having my kitchen done recently, I ate a whole slab of Lindt dark chocolate without even realizing it. And I teach this stuff. I know this stuff. It's not that but this is the thing, is that your subconscious can sometimes just help you along the wrong path instead of you just being in that awareness. Oh gosh, okay, I'm going to enjoy this. Just take one cube, one row, whatever it is, and put the thing away. That's what I say. It's just, finding those one or two things that you can start with. Once you've got those fairly well mastered, I would say like the 80%, 20%, then add something else. So if you know that the thing that you do the most is gobble up your food, then look at those ideas that we've just mentioned earlier. If it's that you eat too much, then look at a smaller plate. There's a whole lot of ways where you can just get started, but just get consistent. That's what I'd say.
Exactly. I love it.
So is there any other pearls of wisdom that you want to leave our listeners with today?
I think it's as you were saying, it's picking one thing and starting with that. And I know that what tends to happen is we kind of ignore it, we get really frustrated with ourselves, and we want to change everything, and we want to notice it tomorrow, And what happens when we do that is we set ourselves up for this roller coaster of all or nothing. And the way that Bev and I are talking about, the changes are slow, but I think what people fail to recognize is they compound. So if you make this one change of eating from a smaller plate, so you're decreasing the volume, that in and of itself is not going to have a huge result tomorrow or next week, but over time it will. And over time you are adding in all these other little things. The power of this positive compound interest results in a big thing. So I have lost weight before on crash diets. I can totally lose 5-7 kilos in a week or 2 weeks. I can also gain it back just as fast. On this journey to dropping 78 kilograms, I didn't really hit a plateau or slow down. It actually kind of stayed quite steady state, though slower than in the past, because all the things kicked in over time. And then when you get towards the end, they're all habits. I don't need to do more and more and more to keep this body now. Like this whole maintenance thing could be a whole conversation, and I don't want to take us down that rabbit hole. But this fear of maintenance, it's not a thing when you make these your habits, because that's just your way of being. And you still trip up and you still get triggered and you still have times where, you go and do that. But the amount that you eat is less, the time that you do it is less, and you have the skills to get straight back on, not wait for the motivation, not wait for Monday.
Exactly. That's well said. Yeah, and obviously we're so delighted that you joined us today, and you can learn from us more. We're going to give you the opportunity. So I've got an encore webinar, which is one of my most downloaded. It's called Better Sleep, Better Waistline. So it's just going to go into the detail of those hormones that I mentioned earlier. And the link is bit.ly/Better Sleep, Better Waistline, all lowercase. What about you, Suzanne?
Well, my webinar is coming up, so by the time this comes out, it will probably be, I'm going to make it available as an encore as well. It's called How to Finally Trigger the Long-Term Weight Loss Journey, and it's about the habits and the small sustainable, and it's, if you're done beating yourself up and you're done being nasty to yourself and you're done starting Monday and you're ready to make these small sustainable changes to build your skills. And I'm not sure on the link, I don't have Bit.ly yet, but we'll pop it in the video description on the show notes.
Awesome. So remember, if you have got questions, please be sure to post them below this video. And also remember, if you like what you're hearing now, like it and share it. And then more people can get to sort of feel in control of those cravings rather than being controlled by them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bev, and thank you everybody for watching.
Bye for now.
Bye.